Welcome to The Car Flip Show. My name's Justin. I was a part-time flipper turned full-time used car dealer. This show is all about teaching you how to buy and sell cars for profit. Thanks so much for listening. Let's get into the episode. This is episode 5 of The Car Flip Show. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today, whether you're out on a walk, maybe you're out for a run, you're on your way into work. I know a lot of folks listen to the podcast while they are doing something else. So if you're on the treadmill, don't trip. I was actually at the gym this morning listening to a few podcasts myself. Actually, if you're listening to this on the day this launches, it would be a Friday. I'm actually in Nashville right now if you are on that Friday. I'm actually at a podcasting conference. It's called the Podfecta Podcast Conference. So I'm there today learning more about podcasting and meeting a lot of other people that do the same in a lot of different areas and genres. So hopefully this will be fun and I'll learn something I can bring back to the show. Otherwise, we're going to be looking at two specific things today. One, in the beginning of most of our shows, we have reviewed a product or just kind of brought something in front of you that I use on a daily basis. Today isn't going to be a physical product like we've talked about. The flashlight that I use, the jump box that I use, a few different things here and there. Today is actually a website, and it's a website that I think is going to be very helpful for you. It's the go-to source for me when I'm looking for used parts. For example, if I need an engine or a transmission or maybe just a taillight, we'll get into what that website is and how you can use it. I'll give you a few examples of parts I'm actually looking for right now and how I'm going to go about looking for those on that site. And then also we're going to answer a question that was submitted on YouTube. The question was, well, specifically it was asking if I could make a video talking more about how to obtain a dealer's license or what's involved in the expenses. So I'm going to get into what it costs me on a monthly basis, and I'll actually probably add those up and tell you what it takes on a yearly basis to actually own, operate, run everything that is around me right now. So we'll get into those numbers, but first we're going to talk about car-part.com. That is my go-to source when I need a part that I don't want to buy brand new. So for example, I have a 2003 Honda Odyssey right now, which has been, I think Odyssey is the right name for the vehicle because it's been a bit of an odyssey trying to get it back to our car dealership. I deal with an auction that is about 25 minutes away. This is interstate driving. It's pretty straightforward, 70-mile-an-hour speed limit, so it usually is a pretty straightforward drive. However, I bought a Honda Odyssey at auction. One of my set-in-stone rules, it's actually, we just filmed a video at the auction that day, a video for an upcoming addition to our already created course. A few months back, we launched the Car Flip course, which takes you inside what it's like to buy and sell cars, teaches you from basically the ground level up to where you can flip your first car. And we were actually adding a new module, which is going to be on the dealership side of it. What does it take to own and operate? What does it take to start a used car dealership? And one of the videos I had just filmed the day before while we were at the auction looking at cars was never buy a vehicle from an auction unless you have the opportunity to drive it ahead of time. So basically the auctions that I deal with, you're able to get in a car, start it. You can scan it with your computer. You can drive them. You can shift through the gears, whatever you want to do. Before the auction, you can't do it on auction day, but before the auction, you're able to do that. So we got to this Honda Odyssey, and I know it's taken a while to get to this website and tell what it's about, but this story, I guess, goes along with why I need the transmission. But this Honda Odyssey had a dead battery, so I get to it, battery's dead. We were going to come back around to it. The auction closes at 6, the gates close, and it was getting really close to time, so I didn't have a chance to go back, jump that one off, and drive it. Auction day rolls around, and I hadn't bought, I think I'd only bought one car up until that point. It comes through. I had a chance to look inside. There were no check engine lights. I had heard it run. I mean, there was no knocks. The engine was good. I saw it come around the corner. It come around with pretty good speed, so I could tell that it was at least drivable, and I took a little bit of a gamble, and I bought this 2003 Honda Odyssey for $900 with a buy fee of like $135, so I've got just over $1,000 in this. So I buy it, and I'm thinking, you know, okay, worst case, it needs a little this, needs that. Unfortunately, the worst case on this one it needs an actual transmission. So we get in it to leave the auction. We crank it up, drives perfect. I mean, we get through first, second. We might have even hit third gear on the auction lot. We park it because we're actually needing to put air in a tire of another vehicle I bought, a 2003 Chevrolet Avalanche. So this tire is completely flat. We're trying to find an air compressor. No one's there that has one. So we're hunting that down. In the meantime, we're just letting this Odyssey run because the AC's on and it's nice and cool in there. When we come back after we get air in the Avalanche tire, we go to start, or we go to put in gear the Honda Odyssey, and when we do, it just revs. Nothing, no gears, no first gear, no nothing. And so that's a problem, obviously. So we eventually got it to go into gear. We parked it outside the auction, and when we went to leave, there was nothing. Like, it wouldn't go in reverse, it wouldn't go in drive. We actually had rolled back trying to turn it so we could take off, and we had to push it back up into a parking space, and it was a little bit uphill, so that was fun. But needless to say, or I guess regardless, we were stuck. We couldn't do anything, so we left it. We came back the next day just to see what would happen, and so we started it up cold. The transmission fluid was a little low, so we had added some to it. It actually took off, and I made it about 6 miles up the road, which is not quite halfway. It might have been 6-8 miles. And so we pulled off the side of the road. It died. No transmission. And so we've made 3 trips now, and we're within, I think, 4 miles of my car lot. So we've made a little bit, and now we made a little bit more today. So I've got to go back and try to get this thing, limp it back. It's been an adventure, to say the least, but I don't want to pay the tow bill, so we're going to limp it back. But long story short, I'm going to most likely need a transmission. We might bring it in, drop the pan, and just for fun, put a transmission filter in it and just see what happens. It's a long shot that's going to help it, but we're going to need a transmission. So that immediately sends me to car-part.com, where I can put in 2003 Honda, select Odyssey, and then put in my zip code and then sort parts by location. So it's going to give me the auto recycling centers or salvage yards that have the part and which ones are closest. So actually I have this pulled up on my phone, so I'm going to get that in front of me right now. And as I am doing that, there were several that were close, and of course my phone is not going to do what it's supposed to do. There we go. This one, there were 3 of them actually within 12 miles of me. So it shows there's a salvage yard called McLamb's Auto Shop and Salvage. They have 3 of them, and they're listed for $750. So that's not a cheap transmission, but that's also not inexpensive. It's kind of middle of the road. Who knows? Maybe they would negotiate a little bit on that. They're already the cheapest that I've seen. There's another one a few miles further up the road for $900. There's, let's see, a brand new or a remanufactured one for $2,200. There's one for $800, $850, $800, and there's one 45 miles away for $700. I don't think that salvage yard delivers. As a dealership, we have a garage here, so most salvage yards that are local will deliver the part for free, which is very helpful on the transmission because you don't have to drive a pickup truck over there and grab it. They'll just bring it right to us. So for now, I'm at $750. This is probably labor in the neighborhood of $300 to have someone replace it. $300 to $500 is a very safe number. I haven't looked up the labor rate on this to see exactly what it calls for, but $300 is fairly safe. So roughly I'm going to be in this for an extra $1,000. So I've already got $1,000 plus another $1,000. I'm going to have roughly $2,200 in this when it's all said and done. This is a van that would sell for right around $3,000 most likely. It's leather. It's got power doors, power liftgate. I mean, it's in decent shape. Actually, the bumper, it was hanging off when we got it from the auction, so we removed the bumper so we could drive it. We got to put the front bumper back on. So a little bit of TLC here and there, but it's a $3,000 van. Unfortunately, I just lost $1,000 worth of my profit, and now I'm only going to stand to make about $800. Like, best case scenario, I list it for $39.50. Someone buys it for $35. That would be best case. I'm not expecting that. I would expect to sell it for right at $3. So I'm still going to make about $800 on this, but it's not the $1,800, $2,000 profit that I would have liked to have made. So that is how you would use car-part.com. And I would say carpart.com. That's the name of the site, but if you don't put that dash in there, it's not going to take you to the right website. So be sure to put car-part.com. A few other parts that I've needed recently, and I'll just give you a way to judge whether you should go used or whether you should go new. I also have a 2003 Chevy Avalanche that I bought on the same day at the auction. It has a tail light in the right rear that is cracked. I mean, it's broken apart. You can see the bulbs inside of it. So I need a tail light assembly. I've already ordered this, and I ordered it on eBay because on eBay, it was only $32 for a brand new tail light assembly. On carpart.com, I looked it up, and they ranged in prices anywhere from The closest one, which is only 8 miles away, was $75. There's one for $50. I believe that's the cheapest one I saw that was close by. There's one for $45, but that's too far away. They probably wouldn't deliver. So best case scenario, I call the place that has it for $50, and maybe they'll do $45, maybe they'll do $40. They're not going to do it for $30, and I can get a brand new one for $32. So that's the way to go. It's on eBay and it's going to ship straight to me. So you can't beat a tail light assembly for $32 when you could buy a used one for $20 more. It doesn't make sense, obviously, so you wouldn't buy that used. Another part that I currently need is a tailgate for a 2008 Jeep Wrangler. Now, this obviously isn't a tailgate like a pickup truck. This is more like a swing arm type door that goes on the back. On that, I bought one, and somebody's bumped into the rear tire. The rear tire mounts on the back of that, so someone's hit that. It's pushed in a little bit, and it's actually having trouble opening and closing. So on that, there's two ways that I could go. I could buy a used one, and for me, I'm getting this one in front of me. A used one, they range anywhere in price from, I see one for $315. There's one that's $420. There's one that's $250. They're going to fluctuate in price depending on the condition. Now, the one variable on a body part as opposed to an engine or a taillight is that color plays a factor. This is a yellow Jeep Wrangler. So for me, I would really like to find a yellow tailgate because that means I just unbolt the old one, install the new one, and I'm done. I don't have to get a paint guy involved, and that's going to cost, because that would cost extra money. So for me, there is a yellow one that is at a salvage yard that does deliver, and I'm trying to get this one in front of me. It looks like that one is $310.50. I don't know why they put the 50 cent, but it shows that it has a dent on the inside. So you can call, and a lot of times they'll go out and look at it. They may have a picture. Sometimes they'll have pictures around the vehicle that you can't see, and some will actually list pictures on car-part.com that you can actually look at and see. But this has a dent on the inside. I wouldn't be that concerned about a dent on the inside of the tailgate because no one's really going to be looking there too hard. So if they would negotiate on the price a little bit, I may be interested in that. So I could probably get it for $275 maybe if I can talk them down a little. That means I unbolt the old one, put this one on, and I'm done. I could buy a brand new one. There is a new, it calls it a replacement Jeep Wrangler rear gate shell. So this is a shell. It doesn't come with any handles or anything. The headache on one of these is you have to remove the rear handle assembly. You have to transfer that over. You have to remove the hinges and this and that. And it's a little more work. Plus, it has to be painted. So that's going to be another $150. I mean, it'd be less than $200 to have someone paint it, but they got to paint both sides. So that's just more to do. It'd be really nice to go ahead and buy a yellow one. Same thing if you ever had to replace a door or a fender. I have a friend right now that has a Lexus that someone ran into, and he had an insurance quote for $3,000. It was over $3,000, and all it needs is a fender. The front fender's caved in pretty well, so I was able to show him how to use car-part.com. He found one out of Virginia because it's a more of a specialty model, and it was a special color, so they're going to be shipping that to him. So for the $125 plus $125 for $250, it's $125 to ship it for them because there wasn't one close by the same color. So for $250, he just has to unbolt his fender, put the new fender on. The color is going to be the same, and he gets to pocket the rest that the insurance company is going to pay. So it's very helpful to know where to source your used parts, but it's also a lot less time consuming than driving around to each individual junkyard and pricing and asking if they have it, because that could take you all day when you can look it up in about 2 minutes and see what they actually have. So that's the go-to source when you're looking for used auto parts. Now, some secondary sources, you could also look on a site like eBay. Amazon doesn't do a lot with used parts, but eBay would be a decent secondary search for a used part, like a taillight or even a lift gate or a like a tailgate like I needed for the Wrangler. So that would be somewhere you could also reference just to gauge price, to see if prices are close. Maybe you can go cheaper. Sometimes a used part will be cheaper on eBay, but car-part.com is my go-to resource there. Now to today's question that we're going to be looking at. This came from YouTube. If you do have a question that I can answer on the show, if you want to post it on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're on the podcast, you can email me at justin@thecarflip.com. You can hit me up on the Facebook group, the Facebook page, wherever you want to send your question. Just let me know it's for the podcast, and I'll try to work it into our schedule. But this question actually was from Dragon Slayer on YouTube, and yes, that is their handle or their screen name. But their question was, well, actually it was a statement. They said, you should make a video on running cost of a dealership. So basically the cost that it takes for me to operate here at my dealership. They were curious on what the cost was there. Before I get into going over those costs, which I will break that down for you monthly, and I have a rough number on what it costs to operate this yearly. The first question that you would want to ask is, do you even need a dealer's license? So is that something you should be considering, or are you okay doing it maybe the way you are now? Or if you've never flipped a car before, should you go get a dealer's license and then get started? So my take on that is you shouldn't start out day one with a dealer's license. And the reason for that is, first off, you don't even know if it's something that you want to do long term. So if you go through all of the hassles and the hurdles involved in getting a dealer's license, only to find out that it's not for you, that's a lot of time and, more importantly, money wasted. So I would advise you to start flipping right now. Now, there's a few different ways of going about that. You can flip, by transferring every name into, or every title into your name. You can do it as, and I would phrase it this way: anyone that flips cars without a dealer's license that does it and goes over and above their state limits is doing it with open titles. That's a discussion for another podcast, but essentially it's selling a car without putting your name on the title. It's taking it from one seller to another buyer and not putting your name on the title. It's kind of like if your cousin had a car and they wanted to sell it, but they didn't like dealing with the process, and they said, hey, will you sell my car for me? And you said, sure, no problem. Someone comes to buy it. You're not going to put your name on the title because, you didn't want to keep the car. So you would essentially put the buyer's name on the title, and then you give your cousin the money. We're essentially taking it from the seller to the next buyer without putting our name on it because we're not going to keep the car. Now, if you have a dealer's license, you can have as many cars in your name. There's no limit. So that is a major benefit to having the dealer's license because you don't have to worry about that. So that's something to consider. But do you need it? Do you not? It depends on what your aspirations are when it comes to flipping. In the past, I'd have 7-8 cars in my driveway. Before I had my dealer's license, it got to the point where my volume that I was doing made sense for me to have a dealership, and that also allows you to branch out and have a full-time mechanic like I do. That allows you to be able to do more on the business side than you can out of your driveway. So that's what drove me to start my dealership. It was the scalability of it. It's a lot easier to go to an auction and buy 5 cars in one day than it is to go and buy one car that takes you 5 days to find it. So those are some benefits: the time, the scalability, being able to not have to worry about titles. Every vehicle will go in my dealership's name, which then transfers out to the eventual buyer, and there's no sales tax paid for me as a dealership because it's just transferring into my name and right out. So you need to go over that and see if it is something that's going to, be doable, or if maybe you just want to stay on the side flipping for now. But the costs that are involved, they're not incredibly substantial, except for the biggest one for me is my location. It's not too complex as far as what you have to have. Most states are very similar when it comes to what's required to operate a licensed dealership. So they're going to require you to have a location. Pretty much every state, you have to have a physical location. In North Carolina, the minimum requirement is it has to be at least 96 square feet. It has to be a permanent, what they call permanent structure. That can be a shed. That can be one of those little storage barns they bring in and sit on your property. It can't be a trailer that you pull behind your car. Like, it can't be just like an enclosed trailer. Now, it can be an actual trailer on wheels, like a house type trailer, but they want it to be a permanent structure, and you would have to talk to zoning in your area to determine what they classify as permanent structure. So not only would zoning in your town, city, county have to approve that, DMV would as well. So DMV is going to come out, they're going to look at it, they're going to give you thumbs up, thumbs down. Zoning is going to do the exact same thing. They're going to say yes or no. Once you've cleared that, there's a class that in most states is required that you take. It's usually not terribly expensive, ballpark around $100. I think it's a 12-hour class in North Carolina. You have to renew yearly, so there's a class. You can actually take that portion online. You can actually go into a physical class and take the class if you would, so desire. But there's the initial class, and then there's the yearly renewals, not very expensive. There's the insurance that's required to own and operate a used car dealership. It's called garage liability insurance. You could check with your current insurance provider, or you can Google, garage liability insurances. You'll find several companies that offer that. I use Erie Insurance. Most companies have an offering for the garage liability insurance. For me, that's $2,400 a year, and that's for full coverage. So if someone wipes out half my front line and they leave the accident scene, that's going to cover it. If there's a hailstorm that comes through and all of my vehicles are beat to pieces, it's going to cover that. It's, for me, the peace of mind. You don't have to have that. You could just have liability. That's about half the cost. I think my quote was right around $1,200, $1,250 for just liability. For the peace of mind for me, I went ahead and went with full coverage. So that's required, as well as a bond is. In North Carolina, they require a $50,000 bond. That sounds really scary. Like, how in the world am I going to come up with $50,000? But you don't actually have to put up $50,000. Now, technically you can if you wanted to. That would cover that portion. But you can pay somebody to bond or to sell you a bond, which what a bond is if you were to ever sell a vehicle and let's say you can't or you can never produce the title. If there's problems with the title, the bond's going to come in and take care of that problem for the customer. But it's not insurance. This is not something that's going to take care of it and the problem goes away. You are then going to owe the bond company the money. And I've heard stories, probably not true, but a bond company is not a company you want to deal with. They apparently usually get their money. They, I don't know, like you might develop a limp if you don't end up paying the bond company. I don't know how true that is, but I've heard stories of people not paying a bond company back and mysteriously things happen. So again, that's probably hearsay, but regardless, you have to pay the bond company back if you ever use it. So it's not insurance, but for me, that's only $300 a year, and that's based on your credit. So I think I could have bought it cheaper if I would have done a 3-year. You can buy it in increments. I just did the 1 year, and I've done the 1 year several times. Probably need to look into saving myself some money there. But if you don't have good credit, it may be difficult to find a bond company up front. For me, I was able to get multiple quotes. $300 was the cheapest I found for the 1 year. If you don't have good credit, shop around. Don't go by what you're seeing online. Make some phone calls. Check with other dealers that you know to see who they use. And I forget the company that I even use now, but it's $300 a year. That is required. Those are the major things you're going to need. The location, which will, for most folks, be the most expensive. I don't know if I mentioned, my location costs me $2,500 every single month. So every month I'm paying $2,500 to be here. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm actually less than a half a mile from the center of the state capital here, Raleigh, North Carolina. So I'm on a pretty heavily traveled road here. So I'm paying a lot for the location, but I also have a bay in the back. So we've got room for 3 cars inside. There's a lift. I mean, a fairly nice looking office. It's not the biggest, but it gets the job done. And so I'm paying $2,500. If I was more out in the country, or if I didn't have maybe as good a road frontage, I could be somewhere cheaper. And I actually looked for somewhere cheaper, but this is a very competitive area when it comes to finding a location for a car dealership. Basically, every place that you would imagine, like, oh, that building could be a dealership, or that shack over there that has a little bit of road frontage, maybe that could be a dealership. Every one of those spots is taken. There is a dealership in every area that you can imagine. So when this came available, I jumped on it, and it's been pretty good for us so far. It's also nice to have the office because we can do podcasts like this on the fly, and we've got space to do that. I don't have to take my equipment home, so my kids would bang it up against the wall and all that good stuff. So it's nice to have this location for me, but it is a significant investment of $2,500. So there's the location. You need to get in touch with DMV and zoning to approve your location. There will also be paperwork involved with DMV. There's the class, not a huge expense, $100 or so a year. You've got insurance, which we've talked about costs there, and the bond as well. Those will vary. Insurance will vary based on your driving history somewhat, and the bond will be tied to your credit. So those are the requirements. Now the cost, we've gone over my location, $2,500 a month. That comes out to be about $30,000 a year, which sounds way too much, but the cost of me being in business here. The insurance was $2,400. The bond was $300. There are DMV fees, so you're going to pay for each tag that you have. In North Carolina, your first 5 are included in the registration that they charge. Each additional, and I'm forgetting the number, it's 15, 30. It's not a huge amount, but you can have up to 8 tags if you sell within a certain number of vehicles. You can get more if you wanted, if you are selling more than 100 cars a year, I think it is. But for me, I have 8 tags, and I'm paying ballpark around $500 every year to North Carolina, just as basically the registration and the fees for having a dealership. You've got utilities. That's something you're not probably going to think about when you start a dealership, but you have to pay the power and the water. And for us, we also have gas because we have a heater in the back. So for us, roughly around $200 a month. It's probably a little bit more in the winter when we're having to heat with the gas, but I said $200. That's $2,400 a year. Probably is closer to $3 when the gas is on, but you have to have phone. So you could double a phone number from personal and also the dealership, but that's up to you. So I think I pay roughly $180 a month. Now that does include my cell phone. That also includes 3 tablets. My wife's phone is on that, but it is our business plan. So it's $180 a month. That is $2,160 a year, and that does fluctuate a little bit. And you also have to have internet. I mean, you're not going to be in business today and not have internet. Unfortunately, from a business side, you'll get a really good rate at your house, but when you're a business, they want to charge you an arm and a leg. I pay, I think, $40 a month at my house. I pay $150 a month here at my business. And there's no way around that because there's not any comparable service offered by anyone than Spectrum. We have 100 megabytes a second, if I'm remembering that acronym correctly. And there's no one else close speed-wise here. They're trying to get speeds up here in Raleigh, but where I am right now, 100 megabytes a second, for that price, $150 a month is the best deal that I've been able to find. So that's $1,800 a year. That also includes I have a dedicated phone line that we use as a fax line as well. So that also includes that. So those numbers, if I was to add them up from a yearly standpoint, total to $39,560. And that's before I pay anyone else. That's before I pay my guy that works on Saturday. That's before I pay my full-time mechanic. So if you can imagine what that $39,560 would jump to when you add on another part-time employee and a full-time employee. I didn't add those numbers up, one, because I didn't think it was fair to give out my employees' salary information just for their standpoint, but also you don't have to have those. You can detail the cars yourself. You can sub out that work when you're first getting started, so you don't have to have a full-time employee. For me, it makes sense because I always have something for them to do, so it's a little cheaper for me to go ahead and pay it from a salary standpoint than it is to individually pay and outsource it that way. So you've got roughly $40,000 in expenses. Now that number could go down significantly. Let's say you find a location for $500. You've got a friend that has a building they're not using, and he says, hey, $500 a month. For me, that would save me $2,000 a month. That would save me $24,000 a year. It'd be a lot cheaper to be in business, and obviously that would be beneficial. For me right now, that's not possible because this location is what it is. I don't have enough business taxes accrued to go out and finance a location yet or to purchase land. I think I need 2 years, so I'm close. Actually, I do have 2 years now, so maybe I need to talk to a bank about that. But eventually that's the goal, is to purchase property to put a building on to then work from there, so you're paying yourself for the location and not leasing it like I am now. But for me, it's $40,000 a year just to turn the open sign on. That doesn't include coffee, toilet paper, paper towels, supplies, Windex, oil. It doesn't include any of that, but just to turn the lights on, I'm looking at roughly $40,000. So it can be done for less, but that's just a ballpark of how those expenses break down. So that is the episode for today. If there's any follow-up questions you have about anything that was talked about, feel free to let me know and I'll get those answered for you. No, you're good.
Oh, I didn't see.
I was at a good cutoff point, so
Sorry, I can't.
no, we're good.
Black.
We're good.
It's just black. I couldn't
So
see. Oh shoot.
we're good.
Literally, the end, I was like, oh, 30 more seconds, I should throw something.
Yeah.
Maybe we should leave this in the YouTube just because they can see what's actually happening. So anyway,
I'm sorry.
you're good. We're gonna read.
I think it's good.
Okay, feel like
I
it?
think it's good.
Okay. Cool.
Knowing what we know about it and the condition of the intake
Yeah.
and everything else, I think it's running.
Okay.
Okay. Didn't stall under load. Quick stop. Nothing. So.
Gotcha.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. Easy enough. For those of you watching on YouTube, this will not be in the actual podcast. I think we're just going to leave this because this is real life. But I'm trying to remember where I was because I have to go back into podcast mode and finish this up. You know where I was at? What was I talking about?
You didn't even read a review, you were closing the episode.
I was closing the episode.
It's like literally probably
Probably could be done. Okay, here we go. We're going to be done. I'm going to start back a little bit in case we have to edit something for the podcast. So we'll go from there. Let's see. So that's all for today's episode. I will see you in episode number 6.